What do you mean? So nobody sold no bow. You don't know.
Hey, what's up guys? Ken and you daily here with a custom brim tutorial. This is going to be the updated / fixed version. If you guys have watched my old like 6 months ago custom brim tutorial, it's kind of like a roller coaster. And what I mean by that, it's like skippy music in it, hard to watch, hard to follow, and the best like guide you have is like the text I kind of put in the video. But yeah, this is gonna be the updated / better version, so I'm just gonna leave it at that, and let's just get straight into the tutorial.
For this tutorial, I'm going to be using this galaxy print fabric and this green 100% polyester fabric. This is what most hat manufacturers use. And then I'm going to be using my Brim templates. If you want to download this, I'll put this in the video description. And then if you guys are going to use upholstery or vinyl, I don't know how to say it, just use some tape, non-stick. And then next you have the footers that I'm going to be using. I don't know the exact names for these, but this is the two I'm going to be using today. One looks like this, and the other look like that. And then I'm going to be using this magnetic sewing guide. This is going to help do the brim lines. And then if you guys want a list of all the things I use, I will put that in the video description. And then you got your standard pins. This is going to help keep the brim all flattened out. And then you're going to need your standard cutting tools. Today I'm going to be using the rotary cutter and a little pair of scissors, some sewing scissors I guess. And then I will be using this thread cutter. They're really cheap. I got this for about $3 at Joann's if you guys are wondering. And then a pen to make an outline for the brim. And then the snapback that you want to customize, and that's all the materials you're gonna need today. After you gather all your materials, go and grab your snapback, and the first thing we're gonna do is remove the brim. So I'm gonna be using my thread cutter and my little pair of scissors over there to cut the brim, and this is pretty simple, straightforward, so I'm just gonna kind of cut through, fast forward the clips. You kind of just pick at the thread that's connecting the snapback to the brim. If you're confused on what's going on right now, I'm just removing the brim from the sweatband, and then afterwards I'm going to be removing the brim from the actual crown itself. So here's a clip of me removing it from the crown. And if you guys are new to sewing or new to customizing your stuff, I advise you to just take your time on this and actually practice on a practice hat, and don't expect your first customization to be perfect, because the first ever hat that I ever done, I had no real guidance. I didn't have tutorials on YouTube to help me out, so I kind of just freeballed it, whatever, I don't know the word right now, but I just kind of just went with it and did a trial and error for most of my hats. And then I think a lot of people have asked me why I haven't really sold my hats. It's because I kind of just learned from what I made a mistake on last hat, and that's why I don't ever sell my hats, because I feel like I'm not perfect. But let's get back to the video. So what I'm doing is just removing the fabric from the brim. As always, you're just kind of picking at the thread and cutting it. And then once you get to the very end, you should be able to just pull it off. I'm just cutting some last threads and then pulling it off. And then once you get all the excess thread off and everything all good, you're ready for the next step. For the next step, it's very simple. Go grab your brim or brim template, or vice versa, and the two fabrics that you want to use as the new customized brim, and lay it flat. Take your brim or brim template and cut out about an inch away from the brim or brim template. This is going to give you some extra room just in case you mess up. Then you want to take the extra fabric that you just cut out and place it on the other fabric that you want to use, and cut about the same size. It has to be exactly the same size, otherwise it's gonna end up kind of messy. So just do that. And then turn both pieces inside out, and you're going to be tracing on the back side. So Once you turn one side inside out, you want to trace along the brim like so. And make sure the line is nice and bold so when you go and sew you can see it. So I'm just doing a second outline as a second reminder. And what I like to do is I like to make little marks on the end just to make the trace a little bit longer. It just makes things easier so when I go to sew. And then you'll be ready for the next step. Next thing you want to do is pop into the sewing machine and just follow the trace lines that you made earlier. Just takes your time on this because it's actually pretty hard if you haven't sewn before, so just take your time on this and then always end and start with a back stitch. When you're done, it should look something like this when it's turned right side up. After you're done sewing, turn the fabric inside out again to cut off the excess fabric. This is just gonna make putting the brim inside easier and less painful, so no fringing, no puckering and all that stuff that pisses people off. So after you're done with that, turn it right side up again and then insert your brim. There's no real way to insert your brim that I found to be good every single time. So I kind of just insert it from the top, make sure all the excess fabric is kind of on the bottom. I don't know if that was a good explanation. Maybe I'll come out with a tutorial on that later. But this is what it looks like. And if you guys are having problems with the brim actually bending because your fabric's too tight, what you want to do is just cut in the middle like so, and it will make the brim more flexible. Next thing you want to do is grab some pins and start pulling and pinning the bottom of the fabric of the brim. This is just going to keep the fabric nice and flat, no puckering or anything like that. So see there, I'm just pulling while pinning it into place. This is going to keep it nice and flat so when you sew, it doesn't end up leaving some extra fabric and whatnot. But once you're done, it should look something like this. Next thing we're gonna do is close the brim, and I'm gonna be using this footer right here. You don't need to use the footer, but it just makes this part a lot easier. What you want to do is start and end with the back stitch as always, and just follow along the bottom of the brim. And then take out pins as you approach them. Don't go over the pins because that can actually break your pins or cause some explosion of stuff. So you don't want that to happen. And just follow along the brim as always. And if you start to see some puckering, you might want to pull on the fabric like so. And also take your time on this part because it is a pain if you don't do it right the first time. But once you're done with all that, it should look something like this. And if there's puckering, just kind of pull the fabric like this. Next thing you want to do is cut off all the excess fabric. Keep about 2 inches from the actual bottom of the brim because you'll be attaching this to the sweatband later. What I like to do is find the middle and cut a little slit in the middle just to remind me, and then cut these little slits on the side of the middle. Just gonna make it easier to attach to the sweatband later. The next thing we're gonna do is do the brim lines, and it's very simple. I'm gonna be using that footer and this magnetic sewing guide, which is just a standard neodyne, some crazy name for this magnet. I'll put a full list of everything I use in this video in the video description, so don't worry about that, guys. I'll put it in. But basically, brim lines is so simple. You just run your brim along the magnetic sewing guide. And here's another run through of what I do. Start with a back stitch and then just go along the side like this. And that's basically it. Just run your brim along the magnetic sewing guide and you'll be all good to do brim lines. And if you guys are wondering the measurements for my brim lines, I start with 1 centimeter away from the brim. Then after that, I do 0.5 each new line. So that this is about, I only do about 4 lines in this brim, but you can choose to do as much as you want. No one's stopping you from doing all 20 if you wanted to. But when you're all done, your brim line should look something like this. And if your fabric is puckering like this, what you want to do is grab an iron and just iron it down, and it should solve the problem. But nice and straight lines here, nice and curvy lines, nothing wrong, no puckering and all that good stuff. Here's the front side, and yeah, you're done with the brim lines. Next part is to get the brim ready to attach to the sweatband. And what I like to do is find the middle of the brim, which is a little indentation in the brim itself, and I like to attach it to the middle of the hat, which is the middle line of the snapback, or the crown I should be saying. And you kind of just align those two. If you guys can't follow what I do in this section, I actually have a separate tutorial on how to attach the brim to the crown, like an in-depth tutorial. So I'll put that in the top right of the screen. So if you guys are confused on this section, I'll link it to that video. But other than that, what you want to do is grab some pins, and once you got your sweatband all situated, you want to pin it together. So keep in mind that I'm only pinning together the brim and the sweatband. I'm not attaching it to the actual crown itself. But put a couple pins along the sweatband so it makes it easier for you to sew, because if not, your sweatband will be all over the place. That's what it should look like after it's all pinned. Then after you got all that pinned, throw it into your sewing machine and take your time on this part because it's going to be there for a long time. So sew and then take out pins as you go. Make sure to be pushing the sweatband towards the very bottom of the brim. Make sure it's not like pulling. I know it's really hard to explain, but that's basically how you do the bottom of the brim. Just sew all the way around. Take out pins as you go, and end with the back stitch. Afterwards, after you're done with the sweatband, the next step is pretty easy. Just do a straight stitch, start with the back stitch, end with the back stitch on the top part of the crown. And after this step, you're going to be all done with your new customized brim. So once you're done, you might want to put your hat on a stretcher like this, or anything that stretches out your hat, because your hat has to get used to all the new stitching. But this is basically the tutorial, guys. I hope you guys found this somewhat better than my other tutorial. If you liked it, give it a like. If you have any questions, give me a comment. And if you guys want to see some more tutorials, you guys should totally subscribe to my channel. So this is Kaaaaaaad Daily. Hope you guys have a good one, and peace.